On this episode of Lapeef, Let's Talk.
It's that societal pressure to be masculine and be overly, I don't know, men feel like they shouldn't report it, or maybe they are ashamed.
Wrong again.
Yes, and they're embarrassed.
Wrong again.
Yes, that's the truth. It's just the reality of it.
I don't have to be any less masculine in order to get support when somebody do something wrong towards me. That don't have no factor in whether or not that I should get the benefit of the doubt, or if you should look at both sides of the story when it comes to me reporting what it is that happens to me.
But
it may
impact their decision to report it. That's what you're not listening to.
He reported it, and they were still split about it.
To report it.
He reported it, and he was still split about it. What does that have to do with his masculinity or
reporting? We got the order of protection.
I don't know. I think
they changed the narrative again.
So on our previous shows, it probably been about 5 or 6 shows ago, we talked about Tamar and David's situation. And there's a video that actually came out today that I'm going to play for you guys.
Listen, let me tell you something, Tamara. I am a survivor of a domestic violence relationship. Mm-hmm. And not at any point was David and I in an abusive relationship.
He says you videotaped it and that you threatened to show.
No, I voice recorded it. He videotaped it. He has a camera in his car.
Does that video or your voice recording show any physical abuse?
No, it doesn't. I mean, he showed him text messages and between he and I.
But nothing that substantiates. You say what?
No, he has the videotape. He has it. It was in his car. Release it. No, let me tell you something, Tamara. I loved David. He was my best friend. He was an amazing, amazing partner. He was my son's best friend as well. They were best friends. And it's just so hard because through everything else, I never expected this from him. Now, I have to be real with myself. Is he acting like this because he found me the way that he found me? Probably. I don't know.
Well, our topic is one story, two sides. One story, two sides. And we had this discussion about a couple months ago. And we was just talking about how everybody in the comments were just saying, oh, he's lying. He's trying to play the victim role. He's just trying to use her. And we just had this big discussion about men being victims and people not acknowledging it. This plays right into that situation in our topic, which is one story, two sides. Now we get the other side of the story that came out. Hey, Tawan, I want to start with you first. Did you believe David's story when it first came out? And how did you feel about Tamar's statement?
Well, I watched the entire interview. I disagree with what you said, by the way. I need to make that a disclaimer that I feel that Tamar has received just as much backlash regarding her personality on the show, her being aggressive, her being more of an antagonist. And that entire interview session was about the fact that that's her role in these reality TV shows and that she kind of brings that energy to herself. So I absolutely disagree that it was one-sided and that people were just attacking David. That wasn't true. However, secondly, I feel like that David's story was not believable to me. Not like 100% believable as far as like, oh, he was attacked. And like, I think that it was off a reality TV stunt. And I don't trust reality TV. I honestly feel like they do things to entice us and, to make us believe, that these things are happening. I saw her reality show. David is a very assertive man. He's a very strong man. He stands up for his beliefs. He doesn't seem to be somebody that's a pushover that would just be kind of like, and I don't even know if I'm wanting to say that word. I feel like he doesn't seem like he would just tolerate any type of abuse from anyone. So I don't believe his story. Absolutely Now, I watched Tamar's interview, and I just feel like there was some things that she still needs to work on. There's some healing she still needs to do.
Like that bad acting that she was doing?
It was really not convincing to me. I don't want to say that she's lying because I don't know that for sure. Okay, I don't know that for sure. I do believe that she was being honest about the fact that she wasn't physically abusive to David. And I do believe that he was dramatizing that situation. I think they were in an altercation and the argument got out of hand, but I don't believe that it was the cause, like him going and filing domestic violence charges and doing all that, getting a police report. Like, I feel like that's an abuse of the system. That's my opinion.
Let's Tawana, if this is flipped around and the guy said, "Oh, she's just being dramatic. She's just overdoing it," like the women wouldn't be having it. So I just don't get that when you say that he was just being dramatic. He was just telling his side of the story. And
there are some women who are dramatic. It's just more times than not that it's not true.
I think he was just telling the story. That's just my opinion. Hey, Nick, did you believe David's story when it first came out? And how do you feel about Tamar's statements?
I'll be honest, I didn't care about neither. But I mean, I don't know. I just looked at it like I always look at it as their perspective, you know, his point and her point. I mean, I don't know. I feel like, you know, in some cases, there are always things that happens behind the scenes. I always feel like it's three sides to the story, you know? So it's like, I don't know. I mean, even with, you know, the clip you showed with her, it's like.
3 sides. What 3 sides? What are the 3 sides?
Her side, his side, and then the truth.
Okay.
And maybe always lead with the fact that people aren't forthcoming about the truth already. Mm-hmm. I think I do naturally look at things from the lens that my wife always talks about half truths, right? So it's not necessarily a lie, but there's aspects of the story that you are telling the truth.
Right.
Just aspects of the truth. You're only telling the truthful part. You're not telling the fabricated part. So, I mean, for me, I think I looked at both sides. It was just more so like, oh, okay, it's their opinion. I think from her perspective, you know, I get, you know, folks, the world we live in, folks want to do this road show and, you know, talk about their perspective and, you know, a very, very special episode to talk about something that's intimate, but it's kind of hard to say. I think her presentation was hard to believe, and not to say there was I want to be clear, there wasn't the content, but the presentation of it, you know, the fake tears or the crying with no tears, or I don't know, maybe after the surgery, she's not able to cry. Maybe her tear ducts. I don't know. It just looked kind of difficult for her to do whatever she's trying to do. But yeah, well, just based on the clip. But I think that, you know, I don't know. It becomes the world that we live in right now. I think that society forces us to pick a side, you know, and you're trying to do that right now with us, JR, how you know, lay it in with the question like, well, who do you believe? I was like, it's a perspective. Both of them have their own version of what they think has happened.
Was any of us there?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't listen to both. Still has not changed. Like, no one mentioned anything like, oh, this new evidence that was just disclosed. I didn't feel that way. And I feel like she didn't really talk about anything either. You know, I don't think it's necessarily about like, you know, how much, not to say they didn't love or care about each other or whatever, but here we are. And then I think it's at a point where like, are things reconcilable? I think that would be my bigger conversation is like, hey, can it be resolved? You know, are we at a point where when situations happen, are we able to resolve it, or we just be like, all right, I quit. I can't do this. This is over.
That's like another conversation. The point that I wanted to try to leave with this is that a lot of times we hear a story and we do side with one of them. And often there's another side. And I know specifically I've heard, you know, Anton mention this before, that we have to hear both sides. So I believe that plays a lot in relationships, a lot of like decisions when it comes to the election that's coming up. I just think that we have to understand that there's always, you know, two sides to a situation. And even though we don't know a lot of information about what happened with their particular story, I do think that it's good to hear, and we can apply this to everything else that's going on within our lives, but it's good to hear that when he came out to tell his story, a lot of people were saying he's playing victim. So to actually hear her and to confirm that his story was true, I think that it just brought life like to the situation.
What did she confirm that his story was true?
Well, you know, they was bashing him when he was coming out saying that he was the one that was abused. And during that conversation, I know we was talking about how often that men are abused with the Joe Budden situation, with the Tory Lanez and Megan situation. And again, we don't know all the facts, but we're so quick to judge, based off the norm. So if a woman says she's abused, and even with the system, it's automatically believes that the woman is right. But when it comes to the male, if he says it, then he's canceled. And
none of those situations did the women claim that they were abused. Megan did not claim that she was abused.
Well, it was a form of abuse, is what I'm saying.
So, and neither did
so even if it's
Joe
not
Budden,
all the time,
baby mama. They never claimed to be abused.
She missing a point. She's narrow-minded.
I'm not.
So she can't understand the point that you're making.
Actually,
go ahead, continue what you were saying.
You guys are not open-minded and not
how so?
Listening to both perspectives.
I've listened to both perspectives, and I'm not saying that nobody's right, but the point that I was trying to make.
Your point is specifically saying something that's not true, though. That's all I'm saying.
I'm saying what the people are doing. I'm not saying what they're doing. I'm just saying the whole perception overall. You know what?
But your perception of David's explanation isn't true, though, because David was also seen as justified in filing the complaint, and a lot of people backed him up and supported that because they felt that Tamar was overly aggressive, and they felt like her persona on the show justified that. And then and the entire interview, she talked about how people bashed her because of that. So I just don't agree with that. That's all I'm saying.
Well, we don't have the actual numbers over the entire universe as far as, who was in favor of David and who not. The point that I was trying to highlight is that, to me, you guys can agree or disagree, but to me, it seems as though the norm is that even when you call the police, they're more likely to believe the woman over the man. And so that's what I'm trying to highlight, that not all the time is the man the aggressor. Sometimes it is the women that are the aggressor and the man is the victim. But in the society that we live in today, it's kind of hard to see that. So that's the point that I'm trying to make. Not that I'm saying that people didn't believe what David was saying. I'm just saying, like in our last discussion, it was the topic was, are men ever victims when it comes to abuse? And that's what we was talking about. We could easily talk about women because it happens all the time, but I think it's not enough light shine on the male when it comes to him being a victim. All right, Anton, I want to bring it to you. When you first heard David's story, how did you feel? Did you believe David? And how did you feel about Tamar's statements?
Again, I felt like it was a bad acting job. It almost was making me laugh just to see the presentation, as B-Nix indicated. But secondly, I don't know a guy in my entire life that has ever went and filed a police report based off of something happening to him from a domestic dispute as far as being involved in a woman falsely. I have never, ever heard of it. I've never seen it. So with that being said, I have no choice, especially when we trying to have this conversation based off this patriarchal system, right? In which women are the underlings and they've always been the victims, right? So the narrative has always been created to, if a woman say something, believe her. That's the default, reaction in society, and the way that I think that's been perpetuated for us to believe. I have no reason to think otherwise, that if he takes out the time to actually go and file to say that this happened to me, I don't see why I wouldn't believe him. But like I said, the fact that we even have a conversation based off of whether or not he's believable or not from the get-go shows the double standard by which men have to subject themselves in a society where we're advocating for equal and fair treatment across the board. I think it's a hypocritical point of view for any woman to take a stance to evaluate whether or not they believe a man that files this charge and then say that they support equal treatment for women. It's one of the most hypocritical things that a woman can do in this state and day and age in which they're advocating for all of these rights that would put them on par with men.
Hey, B. Nix, I want to ask you, have you ever been in a situation where you haven't considered the other side, the other truth? Like, has there ever been a situation where you heard a story and you just automatically believe like the truth was right there? You didn't look further ahead to understand if that was the other side or not.
I don't know if I'm gonna answer this question, but I think it's a part of me. Like,
what else is new?
It's the truth, though. I mean, as a man, I do feel like men do get, judged already. Just because it's slated toward, men being the abuser, just because, as far as size and aggressiveness. But I think there's cases where I don't want to believe it. If I do hear it about a man, but it's I think it goes back to like how somebody is provoked. Mm-hmm. I think that's the part where I really don't even like situations like this, because it's like we never know all the facts.
Right.
We never will. To me, facts, only people that truly know are the people that are in that relationship, that are in that situation. Like how she was talking about a camera in a car, which is weird, to have a camera inside your car. But at the same time, it's like, well, only they truly knew, like what's going on. So now we're just speculating.
Well, he was recording with his phone, and she was voice recording. So
yeah, but it gets to the point where like it's already, and I'm not trying to I know we used the word toxic in the past. It becomes one of those like, why are you in a situation where you feel you got to record? Right. Because if it's at that point where I feel like I got to record my partner, to me it's like it's guilt on both sides. But
how's it
I mean,
guilt on both sides if you feel like you got to record?
Because both was recorded. If you feel like, for your own protection. But why be with somebody that you feel that?
How does that emphasize guilt just because you record it?
Well, guilt for staying. I think like people feel different types of guilt. If you stay, it's like, do you feel like, am I guilty by staying with this person, even though I'm still fearful of this person? A lot of people do stay in relationships that it's out of guilt, that they feel like they don't want to leave, or should they leave, or should they not?
So if a woman stays in an abusive relationship, is she guilty?
Well, see, you're misplacing the level of guilt, like self-blame. Say it again.
No, I'm asking, how does guilt equate to somebody enduring through whatever situation that they feel like they're enduring through? How does that equate? That makes no sense to me.
That's not what he was saying, but I understand Anton's point. That's not what B. Nix was saying.
So what is he saying?
I'm saying like guilt out of you have guilt because you want it to work. You feel like you didn't do something right, or that I am causing this. I'm the reason why I'm being treated like this. It's almost like the victimization of it, where you do have guilt of being the victim, that I did something wrong. That's why I'm being abused. And that goes on both sides, both men and women. So,
but it still don't make sense, because
it's not about if it doesn't make sense to you. It's a reality, though.
Yeah.
People do stay in relationships.
If I start recording something, then how does that equate to a level of guilt, even if you think, looking at it from the perspective of, I feel guilt because of my part in it? How does me recording equate to that?
Well, I think the point I was trying to make, the fact that you're in a situation where you feel you have to record. That's where I was going with that point, where why are you in a relationship you feel you got to record anyway?
I mean, but that's an easy question, because
it's not easy, because if it's easy, they wouldn't be in a relationship.
Y'all have to understand, they're on reality TV. Like, we're sitting here.
Similar to what you said in the very beginning of your narrative,
David is cloud chasing.
History has taught us that men that are not proactive and protect themselves are subjected to anything that a woman says. So what I look at that situation is him being proactive and protecting himself, because he will be subjected if she decides to spin the narrative or change it or paint the picture a specific type of way. He's going to be castrated, canceled, and treated a certain type of way, and that's what
I agree. And the thing is, but I said that earlier, Anton, where I said like that's what I do feel like as a man, it is slanted toward men. And JR asked me, hey, is there times where you don't want to believe the other side? You don't like, I don't want to believe that side that the man is always the aggressor. Now, I think I said that when I first started talking. So don't try to make it seem like it's not.
And I don't believe that all the time.
You don't believe what all the time?
That man is the aggressor. It's very, like, it's not always the truth. I've seen situations.
Yeah, because I mean, we're basing this
is the aggressor, and I've seen them be arrested.
Could we basing this off of like very anecdotal information? Oh, this person, he's bigger than me. Because he's bigger than me, he's perceived as being more aggressive than me, and he's stronger than me. And because he's stronger than me, that he could do more things to me because I can't do that to him. Right. And then that's the end of the argument because
it's more believable because of strength, because of the body size, because of whatever. It's more.
So that's the part that makes it wrong.
That doesn't mean that it's not happening and that it doesn't exist. I feel like I've seen, and unlike Anton, like you haven't seen that. I've seen women who have been arrested for domestic violence situations. I've seen women who have history and violence in their background. They continue to date men, and this continues to be the same cycle.
But that's not
my clarity about the guilt thing.
Because we're not talking about clear-cut cases here. We're not talking about women
that
have a history of domestic violence or there's clear.
Not even that they have a history, but
we talking about the court of public opinion. That was the narrative and the question that was asked based off of JR, and that there's always two sides to a story. And history has taught us that men historically catch the bad end of the stick, especially when the case isn't clear cut, especially when she doesn't necessarily have a history of domestic abuse or is not clear that she very clearly.
I get that. I don't think none of us are in disagreement of that, so you don't have to reiterate the point.
The narrative that we having a conversation about is how there's always two sides to a story. And the part that we haven't talked about is the fact that when there is clarification or when there is a new side of the story that's revealed, nobody goes back and say, you know what, I played that wrong, or you know what, I shouldn't have said that. Nobody goes back and delete their posts where they said something negative about somebody and fix it, or they killed somebody's reputation, or they want to cancel somebody. They just move on, and that's unfortunate. Is negative. That's something that I would paint as toxic, and I think that overwhelmingly men catch the bad end of the stick when it comes to that.
It's public perception. That stuff still lives outside of the courtroom, though.
But public perception is based off of history, and historically, women have always claimed that this has happened to them. More importantly, they've been highlighted as it happening to them. So it's not just something that's
reported more often.
Going back to
something that's just
it's reported more often than men. That's the
because I mean, Anton, you mentioned this point.
It is reported more often.
It's not just reported. For example, you don't see as much.
That's not an opinion.
You don't see as much news coverage of men getting released from prison as a result of a woman lying on them as you do as the person that lies on them and says he did this to me. There's a very clear narrative that's painted in the media because the story is more sensational when you can castrate the men versus the men being vindicated as a result of the lie being cleared.
So we need to
hear the lies being cleared as much as you.
Well, I mean, but that's the thing, Anton. Is one of those like. So I mean, the matter at hand, we're talking about more so. Are we talking about the legal system, or are we talking about you mentioned about public court?
We talking about
social media.
Social media.
Nowadays, you can't separate the legal system from the public court because it's so much more influenced. Considering that we have social media, that we have a court of public opinion, that everything is broadcasted. Every time somebody goes to court, they show it on TV. Like the court of public opinion plays into what's happening in the legal system today. You can't.
Well, we're the ones who give it power.
Yeah, I was about to say these are things that's beyond that's not the fault of any legal system. Like
and say that I'm toxic. I'm creating this narrative in society that says this is how we operate. However, what we're not doing is taking accountability for our actions and the role that we're playing in creating this narrative that paints me in negative and doesn't tell the second side of the story.
Yeah, that's the topic.
Well,
One story, two
technically,
sides.
David was the first
It's
side.
three sides, man.
Tamar was the
What's a
second
total of
side.
3 sides? But yeah, that's
It's the
story,
truth,
2
in
sides.
which we still truly would not know the actual truth. I mean, people.
But Tamar's story was the second side to the story.
Right. Well, I'm gonna tell you this, guys.
David has said his
Hold on,
part. So we listened to both sides and made a judgment.
And then
I don't believe David.
But does it go back to the point of almost like who drops the story first? Because I feel in some cases we usually hear the women's side of the story first in a lot of these cases. So this is a little different. You know what I mean?
He said his story first.
Because then it's like, because is it about man versus woman, or the fact of what story did we get first versus what story we get last?
Next, I think you're heading to my point. The reason why I just brought that up was just as an example of one story, 2 sides, or as you would say, 3 sides. I mean, we can apply this to what goes on like in our lives today, in everybody's lives. Like no matter the situation, there's always seems to be a story, and then there's 2 sides. I think that like Anton touched on a point when he mentioned, let's just say like social media. It's just like how often do we see people post things and then all of a sudden they delete it, and then the only thing that we've seen was just like the half end of the story. So there's always another side, even when it comes to like relationships. If you hear somebody was a victim, there's always the other side. We don't know the whole truth. So why is it that people always so quick to jump on one side without hearing the whole entire truth? Why is that?
And that's what I'm trying to say to you, that I don't agree with what you're saying. That people did not jump on David's side.
I'm not talking about that situation. I'm just talking about it just in general.
People didn't jump on either side. They were against, like, it was like a lot of people against Tamar in that situation. So I'm just saying, if we're talking specifically about that, same thing with Meg and Tori. There was people who was like, Megan is an Amazon. She's Megan the Stallion. That's a man horse. She's overpowering him. And look how little he is. There was so many narratives. So you can paint the narrative however it's to me, it's who people you decide to follow. If I follow a lot of people who are pro-feminist movement, who are this, that, and the third, I'm going to hear more narratives centered around that. And if
you don't follow a bunch of people that's not pro-feminist, you're gonna still hear the old
that's not true.
The narrative subjected based off of what's supporting in women.
No, Anton, and that's not true. I'm pretty sure you have tons of shows that support your narrative, and that's why you follow them, because they support your thought and your process. And that's what it is. And the same with JR. And you can find any means to justify any thought that you have in your brain now. So if you want to, like, have sex,
go on any subject
that supports what it is.
Go on any shade room comment, any shade room post, and scroll up and look at the comments. And I guarantee you that the overwhelming majority of the comments will be in support of whatever the narrative is that's slanted towards women.
I guarantee it won't. And look at
comments.
Look at Tamron Hall's like her actual video that she posted of Tamar, and look at the comments underneath that. And I tell you that people are split. And I'm gonna tell you this as a top fan of Shade Room. You know how you get those little top fan badges? That I swear people are split. I am not just saying that. I'm telling you that people have different opinions. You put people in a box based on their gender,
but you just
their lifestyle. People are
just prove my point. He's the victim, but they're split, and the man is the victim.
But
however, if the woman was the victim, there will be an overwhelming majority of support in her corner. And for you to ignore that just shows your own bias. It doesn't necessarily change the narrative at all.
It's JR's point was that people were on one side when David reported it. And I am telling you that that's not true. But if you want to believe that, fine. I don't care. I'm just telling you guys, as a person who watched her reality TV show, follow all of the Shade Room comments, and watch the Tamron Hall show today.
I think I was just talking about the norm. I was just talking about the norm.
He's not talking about that specifically.
I just kind of use that as an example, and I can understand why you might want to focus on that point. But just overall, when it comes to men, when it being victims. Like, men are victims, and I just wanted to highlight that.
They
point.
are.
Men are victims sometimes. It's not all the time, but there are some cases, and I just want people to understand, to hear both sides of the story before you quick to judge what the outcome.
I don't think we should discredit any victim. A man can also be victim, and I don't think that you should discredit any victim. But I do think that we have to be careful when we talk about reality people, stars, and entertainers, because they do a lot of stuff just for
like I wasn't
money.
necessarily I wasn't necessarily focusing on their story, but I think that we
or
can
reality stars.
I mean, outside of the reality story, I think we can pull something from it.
Yeah.
Like whenever I get information, I just take what I need from it. It could be the most outrageous story whatsoever. I just take what I need from it and I keep it moving. I don't even have to respond. They could just be lying to my face, but I might take something from that lie and apply it if I see it as a benefit towards my life. So that was just the whole point of me bringing that story up, is that if their situation is false, okay, their situation is false. But we look out there in the world, there are a lot of men that are in those situations that they do get overlooked as victims, and that's what I wanted to highlight. That was the whole point of it.
It's that societal pressure to be masculine and be overly, I don't know, men feel like they shouldn't report it, or maybe they're
wrong again.
Yes, and they're embarrassed.
Wrong again.
Yes, that's the truth. It's just the reality of it.
I don't have to be any less masculine in order to get support when somebody does something wrong towards me. That don't have no factor in whether or not that I should get the benefit of the doubt, or if you should look at both sides of the story when it comes to me reporting what it is that happens to me.
But
it may
impact their decision to report it. That's what you're not listening to.
He reported it, and they were still split about it.
To report it.
He reported it, and he was still split about it. What does that have to do with his masculinity or reporting?
We got the order of protection.
I don't know. I think
they changed the narrative again.
Oh, go ahead, JR. I mean,
I'm not gonna say that. What you about to say?
But I thought it wasn't about that. But when you support your narrative, you go back to it. But not when I don't understand. It's like it's not about that. But as soon as
because it's never enough. It's never enough for JR to make the point and say we need to look at both sides of the story. Then you come behind him and say, "Well, it's because men ain't reporting because of masculinity." And it's like, no. That's the end.
Hey, JR, are we talking about Tamar and David, or we
the end of the narrative is that we need to be fair on both sides. It has nothing to do with the extra in order to create this narrative that men need to do anything differently than
men need to report.
We're not going for that no more, fam. Like we gonna address this head on. We gonna deal with it, and I'm not letting my fellas be in any other position other than a position of power when it comes to fairness and doing things the right way. We not having that no more.